commentary today. I'm going to share something that's sober, and you might say this is PG-13, so if there's children that listen to this, maybe part of homeschooling or your education, be sensitive to what's age appropriate, all right? The topic is basically what is on the Charisma News and WND and with American Family Association, other websites, Intercessors for America, and it's going to be straight talk today. Boy Scouts in big trouble with 800 sexual abuse claims. It is sobering, isn't it? Let me tell you this. When I was a little boy, I guess I was about maybe 10. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. We had no automobile. My mom scrubbed floor 3 days a week. My dad was a custodian. We didn't have much. But you know what? I wanted to be a Cub Scout and then a Boy Scout. It was my dream. And I got the manual, and I was talking to a buddy, and I was all excited. And then somebody came to our home, and they said there were certain requirements at that time. I guess they've changed, probably. But my mom or dad would have to be able to help and drive people around, etc., and we couldn't do it. So we had to say I couldn't be involved. It broke my heart as a little boy. I so wanted to be a Cub Scout and then a Boy Scout. Last night, a man in Atlanta got to me a text. And he read what I'm going to share with you here today. And he said it's breaking his heart. He was an Eagle Scout. His training to learn to be a young man, a gentleman. And then one day, obviously, a father, a husband, a grandfather came through the Boy Scouts. But he says, my heart breaks as I see what's been going on. Now, if you don't know what's going on, in 2012, the president, now the president, Jim Turley of the current Boy Scouts of America, made a decision, and he spoke out that there should be a gay-affirming, approach in the Boy Scouts. Let boys struggling with or identifying as gay, homosexual, let them in. Well, shortly thereafter, the executive board said, let's go for it. And I would say they caved to pressures. They compromised. And what was an oath that was taken to uphold being what? Morally straight and God at the center was disregarded, and the floodgates were open and a downward spiral occurred in the Boy Scouts. And since then, it's been tragic. Now you might say, well, Larry, don't we need to be, open and politically correct? And isn't that what the Boy Scouts did? They even opened up for troop leaders that would identify in homosexuality lifestyles. Well, you know what? The tragedy is, they're wrestling with bankruptcy being discussed. And last week, and recently, you probably heard, 800 sexual abuse claims from the past being brought forth. And if you read the accounts or the reports, or you read my article, you'll see it'll break your heart what's been going on. Now, we need a biblical worldview when we deal with this subject. And with no animosity, no hostility, people struggle, people have gone through difficult times, and so there are people that struggle with same-sex attraction. Young boys can even struggle with that. We're all tempted in many ways. But the Bible makes it clear, and I read this from Romans 1:24 to 27. It tells us the following. Listen to this. A lifestyle, a practice of homosexuality is there labeled moral impurity, degrading, shameless, indecent, and unnatural. That's Bible. That's not bigotry. That is basically an approach that as a Christian we have to honor. We can't say, well, God has a design for, men and women and marriage and family, but hey, we need to now disregard it and be gay affirming. Well, it's crashed in on the Boy Scouts, and if you've seen or heard and read this article, you're going to discover some of the specifics on it. Imagine 800 clients have come forth and identified over 350 abusers, and now the Scouts' confidential records, known internally as the, quote, perversion files, are being examined. Now listen to this. The Boy Scouts are in trouble. And the article on the front page of USA Today said, I'm quoting, it's apparent that the Boy Scouts defendants continue to hide the true nature of the cover-up and the extent of the pedophilia epidemic within their organizations because the vast majority of new victims coming forward involve claims of abuse at the hands of pedophiles who are not yet identified by the Boy Scouts of America. Now, there is an elephant in the room when you get into this subject, and by that I mean something that everybody thinks, everybody knows, but many say, you don't want to go there, and that is, what is the connection between individuals who are leaning and embracing homosexuality and pedophilia? Now, people say, oh, it doesn't have any effect, but see, there's an open door there, and that's the danger. And statistically, listen to this, the archives of sexual behavior. Now, this is not a Christian organization or a conservative group. Their research revealed, quote, 86% of offenders against males describe themselves as homosexuals or bisexual. Now, the Family Research Council, I love Tony Perkins, and this ministry serves families across America, but adheres to biblical worldview on marriage and family. Their research, and you can go there to their studies and see, quote, since almost 30% of child sexual abuse is committed by homosexuals or bisexual men, but less than 3% of American men identify themselves as homosexual or bisexual, we can infer, listen to this, we can infer that homosexual or bisexual men are approximately 10 times more likely to molest children than heterosexual men. Now, in my article, and I refer you to it, you can read the specifics, you can read what's come out on campgrounds, in tents, and you say, well, there's safeguards and we don't have to be concerned about it, but if you're a parent, if you're an educator, if you're a youth pastor, a leader, you have to be vigilant in terms of these things. Many parents today say, you know, when my children, they go on a trip or they're involved in swimming or volleyball or baseball and they go out of town, I'm very concerned about, 4 young people that are sitting together in a motel room and what goes on. Well, you better be concerned because you're going to give an account to God for that. We raised 4 children. We have 7 grandchildren. We have to be very careful on these things. Now, let me tell you what happened to me. When I was around, I guess, maybe 12, I did something I shouldn't have, and that was I was hitchhiking. And I got in a car with a guy, and this guy was a gay man. I didn't know it at the time. Now I realize, and there were certain characteristics. Now, that's not stereotypical, it was just there. And this guy put the moves on me. He started to prey upon me. And he offered me money, $10, to basically, as he was seducing me, to get me involved, to come to his place. And I just say to this day, I thank God that I jumped out of that car. Can you imagine the trauma and how my whole life could have been destroyed because of an individual that was a gay man that decided to kind of prey upon a young man? Now, we have a warning, and that is we need to return to the roots in this organization, and it's not too late. Do you know what the Boy Scout oath is? You might say, yeah, vaguely I do, but let me read it to you. The Boy Scout oath, listen to this. This was adhered to, think of it, for how many years? 100-year organization says this: on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country. That's patriotism. That's God-centered. And to obey the Scout law. That's obedience. That's character. To help other people at all times. That's looking out for others. Not a narcissistic, selfish, well, I do what I feel, I identify with who I want to be. No, and then it says this: to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Now here's the deal. Honoring God, upholding moral purity was rooted in that. How about this? Avoiding physically, emotionally, and mentally harmful homosexuality. Honoring parents, the opposite sex, and country, and steering clear of pornography. Those are all encompassed in that commitment to remain morally straight. And then there's patriotism, obviously. This was the original vision of the Boy Scouts of America. So this commentary is a sober one. This is not 3 ways to be a happy, clappy Christian. And I want to challenge you. There is a wonderful organization today. Many of you have probably heard of Trail Life. And this has sprung up as a wholesome alternative for parents and for young people. Trail Life USA, serving parents and young people. Yes, here's the deal. God has a standard, and we can't risk deviating from it without experiencing horrendous consequences. That's what's happening to the Boy Scouts. May they have the courage to change, rescind their decision, and no matter what the pushback, to say, we're going to return to what is righteous and what was our original vision. Let's pray for them.